Adobe Photoshop Elements, Introduction to the Workspace and Image Editing Basics. The purpose of this video is to empower you as an educator with some basic skills so that you can immediately begin to use Photoshop Elements to help students express their ideas in new and creative ways. Our guiding questions: what is Photoshop Elements? What can I do with Photoshop Elements? And what does Photoshop Elements look like? Photoshop Elements is basic yet very powerful image editing tool. Its intuitive interface really inspires creativity. It works well together with Premiere Elements because you can put still images that you've created or edited right into your movies. It's based on the same software engine as the Pro version of Photoshop, and because it has many of the same tools and panels, it's a great stepping stone for kids to move from Photoshop Elements into Photoshop Creative Cloud. What can students do? They can illustrate their writing. They can convey thoughts in creative ways. They can demonstrate their understanding. They can motivate someone to do something and do lots of projects in creative expression. What we'll learn in this tutorial is a little bit about how the tools, panels, and workspace act. We'll learn the crop tool, the clone stamp tool, how to do red eye correction 2 ways, the smudge tool, spot healing tool, the sponge tool, and how to do color correction 2 ways. Now that we understand what Photoshop Elements can do, let's see what Photoshop Elements looks like and learn some very common image editing skills that you can use right away. When you first open Photoshop Elements, the Welcome screen allows you to choose the Organizer or the Photo Editor. The Organizer is where you can import pictures or the assets you'll use for your movies and manage them. But today we're going to be focusing on the Photo Editor. At the top of the Photo Editor, in the tabs, we're going to be looking for the Expert mode. You're going to be experts in no time. Down the left-hand side, the tools are grouped into categories: View, Select, Enhance, Draw, and Modify. When you choose a tool, options appear at the bottom of the panel that allow us to control the tool. For instance, now I have the Type tool, which gives me type options. If I choose to a brush tool, the options change. The area is dynamic and those options change depending on the tool that you're using. Let's open an image. File, Open, and we'll open an image that will help us learn some basic editing skills. The first thing you need to learn is to never work on your original photo. If you're not already working on a copy, an easy way to accomplish that is to go to File and Duplicate. You can just accept the word copy on your file name. Now I have a tab for the original and a tab for the copy, which is what we'll be working on. The first obvious problem with this picture is that the color saturation and contrast just isn't very good. Under Enhance, there are some one-click options you'll see for contrast, color correction, sharpening. We're going to work with levels a little later, but this Smart Fix really is a great choice because it tries to do several of these with one click. And that made a big difference. The next tool that will help us is the Crop tool. We can use the Crop tool to cut away portions of the picture that we don't want. So I'm going to click in an upper left corner and just hold the mouse down and drag around the part of the picture that I want to keep. The Crop tool gives you this nice grid indicating the rule of thirds. What the rule of thirds tries to teach us is not to put the action or the subjects of the picture in the dead center. It's trying to guide us to put as much of the interesting part of the picture as we can along these internal grid lines, along the thirds. Now when you're ready to do the crop, you can either click this green plus sign that appears, or you can simply press return or enter, which is what I'm doing now. Well, that helped a lot, but we still have some distracting areas in the background. We can fix those with a tool called the clone stamp. Now, the clone stamp, let's look at our brush size when we bring it over. You can size the brush in a slider in the options, or it's a good time to learn the shortcut for sizing any brush shape. On your keyboard next to the P key you have square brackets. The left square bracket, tap, 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 makes your brush smaller, and the right one, tap, 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 makes the brush bigger. This brush size will work well. What I want to do is take a sample of this nice wood paneling on the left side of the picture so I can paint it over on the right side. To take that sample, you hold down the Option key on Mac, or it would be Alt on Windows. It turns your mouse into kind of a plus sign. When you get that different little mouse indicator, you'd simply click. Now I don't see anything happening, but I took my sample. I release my Option or Alt, and then I can come to the other side and just paint. And I'm painting that wood paneling. Do you see that plus sign moving around on the left? That's trying to show me what it is I'm painting over on the right. Now, why is that important? Well, what if I would have sampled, and I'll do it again, a little closer to his ear, and then I come over here to paint. Now look where that plus sign is. Okay, look what I'm painting. Oh my gosh, I painted another ear. You see, so it is important to keep your eye on where that plus sign is. I'm going to go sample again. You can sample as many times as you want to and come over and paint. What helps us today is to turn off this option in the panel called Aligned. That means that whenever I lift up my brush from painting and I start painting again, that plus sign on the left moves back to the spot I first sampled, and that's helping me so that I don't paint ears or shoulders over here. And I'm moving along pretty quickly. When you paint around skin, it's nice to have a soft edge brush. You can choose soft or hard edges in this brushes panel. There, that helped. Now let's look at the red eye problem. I'm using the zoom tool now. You can either click, click, click with the zoom tool, or you can click and drag around an area that you want to move closer to. Some shortcuts for zooming also appear in the View menu. Zoom in, zoom out, fit on the screen. You can use these shortcuts. It's showing Command for my Mac. It would be Control on Windows. Instead of remembering equal, it might be easier for you to remember that the other character on that equal key is a plus sign. And so Command or Control plus zooms in, Command or Control minus zooms out, Command or Control with the 0 fits it on the screen. All right, back to red eye. We can see under our Enhance group that there is a red eye tool. This is a one-click tool. You simply bring it over the picture, and the first dot you click on should be a red dot. You just click and wait, and it replaces all the red with black. We'll do the other eye. Okay, I'd like to move over to the bride and fix her eyes as well. The best tool for moving is the hand tool. But, you know, it's kind of clumsy to have to go all the way up here and click on the hand tool to use it, so I'll show you a shortcut. No matter what tool you have been using, and I'll go back to the zoom tool, you can simply press the space bar and it turns any tool into the hand, so you can push, 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 and when you release your space bar, the tool you were using comes back. I'm going to go just a little closer to her eyes. Her eyes are actually blue. They're not black. If we did a one-click replacement, they would be black. Let's see how to make them blue. We're going to use a brush. In the options below, look at the 3 different brushes you have. The one we want to use is Color Replacement Tool. The size of the brush is just a couple of pixels in my case, so this is a good size. we want to make sure in these three eyedroppers in the options panel that the middle one is selected. It means sampling once. That means that the first dot that I click on is the color we want to replace. But before I can replace, I have to choose the color I want to use for the replacement. So I click on the foreground color indicator and the color picker comes up. We use these little sliders along the rainbow bar to get into the color group that I want to be in. And then in the area on the left, you actually have to click on the color, the actual color you want to use. We need to choose one that's slightly darker and grayer than you might think, because we're going to paint tints of it. And if you did a bright color, she would look crazy. So with the new color selected, remember we have to click on a red dot to start. So click and hold and just start painting. And it's finding all the red dots and replacing them with our new color. And I'll do the same on this eye. Don't have to change any settings. Just click on a red dot, hold the mouse down, and just paint. I could drag all over that white spot. It doesn't make a change because there's no red there. Now it's hard to see how much better that is till I zoom out a bit. And oh my gosh, doesn't that look better than the one-click color correction? Okay, let's talk about glare. I'm using the zoom tool and we'll zoom into his glasses. The tool that we'll use to correct glare is a smudge tool. Now it might be hiding underneath this blur tool in the enhance group. Let's click the blur tool and you'll see down in the options there's this finger indicating the smudge tool. That's what we want. We'll make the strength about 50%. And this brush size is actually just about right. The way the smudge tool works is you click and hold your mouse down on the color that you want to push over top of something else. So I'm taking that flesh tone, clicking on it, holding the mouse down, and just pushing in one direction from the outside in over that glare. If you drag back and forth, it'll just smear it and make a mess. So we're pushing the flesh tone, and I'll do the other little glare over here as well. Push from the outside in. If you want to fix any glare on the skin, you can do that, but pull your strength down to maybe 20 or 25% because you just want to dull it a little bit. You don't want to completely remove it, but you can just buffer it a little bit. Okay, now I'm going to move up. I'm using my space bar to get the hand tool and move up. And you might be tempted to use the smudge tool on the little boo-boo on his forehead, but there is a better tool for that. It's the Spot Healing Brush tool. And the way it works is that you want to get your brush size so that it just encloses the problem. And this brush size will work great. Then you just click. And it's magic. It takes the problem away by trying to match the outside pixels around the brush shape perfectly. The last problem we'll try to correct here is teeth whitening. That's a very common thing people want to do. Don't use color replacement brush for that. The best tool is a sponge tool. The sponge tool in its default mode is desaturating, meaning it's like it has a sponge full of bleach. You want to keep your flow to 25% around that area and then just start going over that a few times. It's very natural looking when you keep the flow at a low level. I'll just do the right side. Can you see the difference? It lifted out that yellow cast. Again, just like having a sponge full of bleach. Let's take a look. Our photo looks much better and is a real keepsake. Now, before we are finished, let's open another photo and look at color correction and a couple of ways to do color correction. Again, you don't work on your original, so we'll go to File, Duplicate, and work on that copy. Remember in Enhance, there are these one-click methods. Let's see if the auto color correction does a good job. And in this case, it really, really did. but sometimes it doesn't do exactly what you want. Now I'm going to undo that. Again, undo is Command or Control Z. And I want to show you how the pros do it. Under Enhance, it's under Adjust Lighting, and it's called Levels. When the Levels panel comes up, it shows us a graphical representation called a histogram of how the colors are distributed in the picture. We're looking at red, green, and blue channels all together, but we can also look at the channels individually. Let's look at red. You can see red is all kind of skewed to one end. That's why it has some problems. How do we fix it? We use the markers on the far end of the histogram. I'm using the left one, which corrects for shadows or the black point, and just pulling it in so that it points to some significant information on the histogram. See, that helped already. Let's go to green, and in the green we'll pull it in a little bit from the highlight end or the white point end and make it point to some significant data on the histogram. You know, you can call this hugging the mountains. You just take these end sliders and make them hug the mountains, and the kids will understand that. And I'll just move the blue in a little bit on the highlight end. Now when we go back to RGB, you'll see that it looks a little hashed. It's showing us we did some correction. And doesn't that photo look great now? The times that I use the mid-tone slider is if I might want to print this. If my mid-tones look a little muddy and I just want to lift them out of the mud, I can move that mid-tone slider a little bit to the left and just lighten the mid-tones enough so that the print is a little better. And that looks much better. Okay, let's review what we've learned. We learned what is Photoshop, what can we do with Photoshop Elements, and what does Photoshop Elements look like. We worked with tools, panels, and the workspace, the crop tool, the clone stamp tool. We did red eye correction 2 ways. We used the smudge tool, the spot healing tool, the sponge tool, and we did color correction 2 ways. We learned these shortcuts for zooming in and zooming out and fitting on the screen. We changed to the hand tool with the space bar, and we controlled our brush size, as well as learning the undo shortcut.